In today's video, we're going to be having a conversation about how to run a successful TCG player business online, as well as some of the tips and tricks that a lot of people don't know about on how to get product for cheaper to flip. Now, before we jump right into it, as always, we do weekly giveaways. All you have to do to enter is leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then lastly, if you don't know already, we do have a wholesale access tier that we recently just introduced to our Patreon, where you can access any of our distributors for, of course, wholesale pricing. If you want to join the community elsewhere, of course, we also have links down in the description below for our Discord, as well as other links to our socials. But jumping right into today's video, when it comes to TCG player, I feel like everyone tends to make a video of what's the best strategy to go from seller level 1 to seller level 4. What's the best strategy of course, trying to get yourself to direct. But there's not a lot I feel like people talk about in terms of general different theories or strategies of how to run a successful TCG player business. And so that's kind of what we're going to be breaking down and what works for you. So the first thing I want to kind of have a conversation about, and you of course don't have to sit or stick to a certain guideline, but let's talk about the different methods in which you can do so, or at least the way in which I look at it, right? So typically you've got a different product of course, the singles market. You've got obviously the general sealed product, and then I would say the general loose pack. Now you can of course argue loose pack and sealed product is the same, but I would argue it's vastly different in terms of the way in which you approach it from TCG player. With of course single packs, you're not having to spend nearly as much on shipping as you are with a, of course, let's say booster box, lead trainer box, etc., etc. And then there's a whole secondary market that you also have to consider when looking at it from that perspective too. So which one, of course, works best for you? I think you could ultimately, at the end of the day, kind of take advantage of each and every one of them. But as you continue to scale your business, then it's something that you can, of course, try and focus more on one versus the other. So the first one we're going to talk about is the one, of course, that most people are more than likely hopping onto this video for, which is the general singles market, right? How do you really make money when it comes to, of course, TCG player with singles? Well, there's a lot of opportunities to make money, whether it be, of course, joining Facebook groups that have opportunities for you to buy bulk, whether it be going on to places such as eBay, Mercari, and then buying Pokemon product that are higher end and then flipping it on TCG player, and etc., etc. One of the biggest things I would say that I've learned, and this of course applies for packs as well as singles, but there tends to be an overvaluing a lot of the time of TCG player cards. For example, we'll of course show this with Pokemon packs at first, but Majestic Dawn, if you don't know about that set, you can on average get the booster box prices per pack anywhere between the 90-ish to 115-ish dollar range. Of course, sometimes you can get it for cheaper, sometimes it's not available for more if we're talking on eBay. But if you go to eBay groups, if you go to, of course, Mercari, if you go to Instagram posts, a lot of the times it's pretty readily available for around those general prices. You go to, of course, TCG player and you look at some of the most recent sold prices. You've got 170, 130, 125. And of course, most recently, the prices have just gone up since the supply is so down. Now, you might say to yourself, if you look at the general spread between the last price, of course, that was sold till now, it has been almost a full month since then. But for the most part, if you are trying to play this kind of like older vintage pack price, you're looking at it as something that you're slowly selling off at much higher premiums. And for you, of course, that's going to mean less value and effort you're having to put in for more money acquired, even when you take fees into consideration. Let's say I, of course, buy on average a Majestic Dawn pack for around $105, and I were to just list it at $150 and it were to end up selling. Once you do the math, of course, calculating your general fees expenditures, you're more than likely looking at about $127 is what you're paying, or after, of course, fees or what you're receiving. Then you add about another $4 to ship. Your profitability is going to be around $20-ish, give or take, which I think is something that, of course, if you're buying at that 105 price, which some people will be like, where are you finding it at 105? But if you're getting creative, you should be able to find this. That's about a 20% margin off of just reselling a product. And all it took you is to just go buy it off of eBay or another site, package it up, and then easy flip, right? And you can do that exact same thing too with hiring cards. Another perfect example, if you guys don't know, I'm a huge Diamond and Pearl fan, so this is how I know all these strategies. But level X cards, for example, the premiums for level X cards are absolutely insane. I have absolutely no idea why they're so expensive, but if you go look right now, Torterra level X, the cheapest price is $55. Of course, once again, you're looking at this as a slow sell when you're doing this general strategy, and because this is more older vintage stuff. And if you look at the most recent sale that it had, it was about a month ago for a near mint condition that did sell for $55. You will, of course, have easier times doing light played, minor played, and if you want to, you can always find deals on that. But I just want to use near mint as an example because I feel like there's a really good amount of opportunity for near mint, and here's the reason why. So when it comes to TCG Player, they have a certain structure in which you can sell cards. You can sell cards at near mint condition based off of their own standard, and what qualifies as a near mint? Well, if you're going off a PSA standard, PSA has near mint as a 7 and an 8. When it comes to 9s and 10s, a 9 is a mint and then a 10 is a gen mint. So 7 and 8 are technically in near mint condition. What can you go do right now is you can go pick yourself up a Torterra level X, if we're just going off of recent sales, for $26 in a PSA 7 condition. Of course, you can sometimes find that for cheaper, sometimes it's more, etc., etc. But the point that I'm making at the end of the day, if you're ever one of those individuals that's really concerned about selling a card at near mint condition, if you really are trying to, of course, finesse the system a little bit, there is a ton of opportunity in going and opening old vintage slabs in PSA 7 condition, which is technically considered the standard for a near mint condition, and then making a flip off of it. So that's something I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on, and you have to, of course, take into consideration. Now, if you're not, of course, at the point in the video where you're like, all right, Eli, so older vintage packs, older, singles that I'm purchasing off of collections, et cetera, or Facebook marketplace groups or whatever. What about bulk? How do I really jump into this? So obviously a lot of people don't have, of course, their own website or their own advertising to acquire bulk at whatever rates are. And of course, it's a decently competitive market when it comes to that. If you're able to, of course, acquire bulk, the routes I would tend to go there's Discord groups, Facebook marketplace groups, and then local postings within your area where you're typically able to acquire bulk at a reasonable rate. The current going rate, I would say, for bulk at this time is about 3/4 of a penny, or about a penny per common uncommon card. And so when you are going through this process, always keep that kind of in mind in what's most affordable to you. I know that there are some places, of course, when looking at, let's say, for example, Safari Zone, that they are charging a penny and an eighth to sell, of course, your bulk to them. But for the most part, they're very much in and out all the time of having their product listed for sale. So a lot of the times you will find it that, oh, this seems like a great deal, and then a week later you look and they're closed for their overall submission. So you got to go with what the rest of the market is typically paying, of course. So if you're able to go into a group and you're able to buy at these rates and pick up a bunch of uncommon bulk, then you're able to, of course, find some opportunity to be able to take that bulk and then, of course, flip it. Now, assuming, of course, because like I said before, most videos on YouTube, they're talking about the progression of 1 to 4. So this is a little bit of a more advanced video. And by 1 to 4, I mean seller level 1 to 4. We're now going to be talking about, okay, I've acquired a large supply at a reasonable price of common uncommons, of reverse hollows, whatever you want to, of course, say. Or maybe you didn't buy it. You just got it from your collection that you would hold on to some bulk for a long period of time. What do you now do with it to effectively, of course, sell it as quickly as possible? Now, there's multiple different methods that people have, and I've compiled these methods based off of a lot of the individuals that I've had on my live streams. I want to give a shout out to RNG Games. He's one of the individuals that's done this, or TCG Player Bolt King. He's also another really good individual to watch and follow for a lot of this information. So I'm going to, of course, have a conversation about different strategies that I've heard from certain individuals. One of the first strategies I would say once you do hit that level 4 is I've heard nothing but a consensus that direct is the best route to, of course, funnel into. And so what do I mean by that? Well, when it comes to direct, if you don't understand how the direct program works, of course, it's pretty simple once you hit seller 4 to hit into the direct program. But the concept of it is they're going to help save you on shipping cost by, rather than, of course, individually going through packaging an envelope for one order and then another and then another and then another, you're going to combine all of the shipments into one and then ship it to TCG Player at their warehouse, and then they're going to handle and disperse the distribution for all of the other orders. Of course, with that, there is an entirely different fee structure. If you're doing just the general envelope structure, it's about a 15% fee plus 30 cents. If you, of course, are a part of the program at that point, the pro program. But if you are using the direct, it is 50%, which sounds like a pretty steep fee, but you have to take a couple of things into consideration as to why. First thing to consider with that, of course, is for most people, of course, you're going to be saving a ton on shipping. Once you do the math, because you're combined shipping it to one location, you're paying on average about a penny a card to ship it to their location. For some people that are, of course, buying stamps in bulk, you are going to have an opportunity to, of course, make value off of those stamps, because you're really, not running a card business, you're running a stamp business. And if you don't know what I mean by that, there's opportunities on eBay or Facebook marketplaces to go and buy stamps for, 25, 30 cents a piece. And some people are like, wow, that's crazy. But the quantities in which you're having to buy it in, you're spending $5,000, $10,000 on stamps. So you have to really take that into consideration. And if you say to yourself, okay, well, I do want to buy those stamps, and then of course, focus on the envelopes, you still have to take one other thing into consideration, which is your time distribution, in which, of course, it's your most valuable asset. If you're saying, okay, well, sure, I'm making money off of every envelope purely just based off of the stamp pricing. And since, of course, with TCG Player for orders under $5, you are getting that 99 cents, and that's where you're going to make up the difference. And then the cards after that are just pure profit. But it's not that simple, because if, let's say, for example, you're only able to, of course, push out 20 envelopes, which, could equate to 50 cards, it could equate to 100 cards, and do that within an hour, versus you can ship out several thousand cards in an hour through direct. You have to really find value in terms of how much money you're truly making, even if that fee is higher. Don't think of it in terms of final value. That's what I feel like a lot of people really get hung up on this, and this is what I've kind of learned the most. What you should really be considering is the general volume and not necessarily the general margin, right? Everyone always looks to envelopes, at least from the individuals that I've had these conversations with and have done the math, and I've done this myself, where it's like, okay, why not go the envelope route if you are buying, of course, stamps at such, affordable prices? And for most people, it's a no-brainer, because if you aren't, of course, buying stamps in such high amounts of volume. But for the sake of it, if you are, obviously time is your most greatest asset. And so you should never look at that fee structure in a way that you're going to say, okay, this is something that isn't realistic to me. I'm, of course, going to then go with TCG Direct, because it does offer so much availability with your overall time. And that is something that, once again, you can't get back. And if you're, let's say, running this as a side hobby, and you are eventually going to be enrolled in the direct program, and you only realistically have a couple hours a day or a couple hours out of the week to really run this program, it's going to take you far less time to just have that once or 3 times a week TCG Direct order you got to ship out for a couple hours at the end of the day, versus you're having every single day orders on envelopes, and you're, of course, having to consistently try and get those envelopes out. Not to mention too, if you are part of the direct program, when it comes to direct orders, you tend to get a higher premium on cards because it is backed by TCG Player. So you're getting a general value out of that too. You could have a card that's worth, let's say, $1.50, and on TCG Player Direct program, it can be valued at $2.30. The customer values the convenience of having all of their cards shipped from one location, rather than having to consistently try and pull from so many different buyers. And that's something that's really nice, because it's much easier just being like, oh, I got a package from direct, here's all my 20 cards I ordered, versus, oh gosh, I gotta wait for 10 other envelopes to arrive before I can complete my master set. So there's a level of convenience that, of course, the buyer is willing to pay for, and that's why you're also getting that additional benefit from that, which is hopefully going to make up for, or at least offset, some of the costs that you're having to, of course, bite the bullet for with the overall fees. Now it comes into the next portion of the general strategy when it comes to scalability of this all. So you're saying to yourself, okay, Eli, well, let's say for myself, I am, of course, buying 1,000 cards worth of bulk off of a marketplace, right? And then you're saying to yourself, about 70% of that is going to be cards that's valued at a penny or 2 pennies, right? And you're, let's say for the sake of the argument, you're buying it at a penny yourself. You have to then say, okay, what do I do with all this garbage? If I go and try and list it, one, for a lot of these penny cards, they're extremely low demand, so it's going to be extremely difficult to just sell them individually. And then two, even if I, of course, am selling them, and let's say hypothetically I am running them through the direct program and they do happen to sell, if I'm buying them for a penny and I'm selling them for a penny because that's what they're worth, you're just losing a penny each time around. So it doesn't make sense for you to do something like that. So what is the general alternative in other, of course, methods to get rid of this like 70-30, 80-20 bulk? I would say you've got a couple of different options that I have seen people have. So we're going to talk about the first option, which is, of course, one that was introduced to me by TCG King, Bolt King. I want to, of course, give a shout out once again to him on this. It's long tail theory. So it's the concept that, of course, if you look at the way in which bulk is over time, it has continuously gone up in value. I mean, look at Sword and Shield Base, look at Rebel Clash, look at Darkness Ablaze. It might be quite interesting to see that, of course, when a lot of these sets first came out, bulk on average, was only worth a penny, 2 pennies, 3 pennies. But over time, after a year has been gone, 2 years have been gone, 3 years have been gone, all of a sudden, this bulk is now worth 3 pennies, 4 pennies, 5 pennies, 6 pennies. And so your margin, of course, has drastically gone up over time. And you might say to yourself, okay, well, that's a long time to realistically wait for you to, of course, play into the margin of that. And don't get me wrong, there is some time that you're obviously going to have to take in terms of this theory. But if you're just trying to get, of course, a load of inventory built up over time, which you're, of course, going to over the long haul, if this is a long-term side hustle play for yourself that's going to turn into consistent profit, then that's something you obviously have to consider. Now, for some people, of course, you might be saying to yourself, okay, well, I don't really look at this as a long-term deal. I don't know how scalable this is for me. I just like to do this for a couple of course, in terms of a side hustle. Or maybe you just want to consistently be flipping because in your mind, the more liquidity you have freed up, then obviously the more time is going to, of course, be expended in consistently making revenue, because you always have to take these things into consideration. How much ultimate time do you have to do this? For a lot of people, long tail theory makes the most sense for them because, hey, I don't really have a ton of time to consistently be packaging up cards. So if I can just sell it slowly over time and make maximalized profits on it, then consistently after you've been sitting on a product for a year or two and all of a sudden, hey, that card that's worth a penny, let me sell it and price it above what the current market is at 4 or 5 cents. Sure, it's much higher than, of course, what most people are listing it for, but eventually it's going to, of course, get to a point where it's going to sell for much higher. And there are instances too in which it can actually sell a lot sooner than you might predict because one individual wants to buy 100 of that copy of that card for whatever reason why they do it, but they're going to all want to buy it from you rather than try and buy it for cheaper off of 7 different individuals and have to pay $1 shipping for each instance. So it's not necessarily a guarantee that you're always going to have to spend several years before you can ultimately make a long-term, of course, play on this. You can easily acquire value off of slowly selling it off at a higher premium price, knowing that it's eventually going to sell at some point or another. But like I said before, if that's not a strategy that, of course, is up for you, then there's totally different opportunities for you to really find value. I would say one of the ones is the Amazon program. So there's 2 different forms of Amazon's program that, of course, you can have a conversation with. Shout out first and foremost to RNG Games on this aspect, but they more or less have a program that is extremely similar to the, of course, TCG Direct program, where you take a bunch of products that you've, of course, developed yourself, you send it off to Amazon, and then they list that inventory and sell it for you. You can, of course, create bundles, whether it be like 100 card lots, 200 card lots, 1,000 card lots. You can create mystery packs, and that's something that you can, of course, do these bundles, these lots, these mystery packs, etc., etc. You can package them all up together, and then you can, of course, send them off to Amazon, and then that's a way that you can get rid of all this extra bulk valued at anywhere between, you know, a penny, 2 pennies, 3 pennies, etc., etc. If you're going off of the RNG game strategy, kind of what he did, he had informed us that what he likes to do is anything that's worth less than 8 cents is what he would filter out and put it in these bulk lots. But of course, if that's something where you would much rather sell 8-cent cards on TCG Player Direct because you still can find value off of that, then you don't have to do that, but just kind of giving examples of what his method was on how he ended up doing it. Now, there is, of course, an alternative $50 a month plan that you can also run with Amazon, and this is their business plan, where more or less the only difference is rather than shipping it to them and then having to pay an exorbitant fee for them to, of course, you know, handle everything for you, which you're going to make money off of it, but it's not going to be as, you know, enticing as you would like. Kind of like with direct versus envelopes, you really got to look at it in terms of valuing your time. You can do a separate program with Amazon where you just become a seller and you constantly are, of course, shipping out these lots yourself and having to, of course, cover the general expenditures, but with a lot lower of a general fee because you're handling most of the business side of it yourself. Now, if you aren't, of course, interested in either of those programs, then another program, of course, you can always run, or I shouldn't even call it a program, but a site you can use, is you can, of course, go to eBay. And eBay, once again, consistently you can find bulk lots you can sell. Consistently you can find mystery packs. And if you're someone that, let's say, for example, has a bunch of GX cards that you're trying to, of course, sell off, whether it be $5, $10, however you want to do it, you can always create mystery pack bundles, and you can, of course, sell off your bulk doing that. I've heard individuals tell me they've done this locally and it's been extremely successful because, hey, at the end of the day, if you're, of course, selling a bundle for $15, it comes with a GX card, EX card that's worth $10, and then a couple of reverse holos that are worth, of course, you know, 50 cents to $1, and then the rest of it is compiled of a bunch of bulk. You might not think it, but it's an easy way to get double, triple, quadruple value off those penny cards because you're able to make a margin with those GX cards or those EX cards that you're bundling in. And the card, of course, of that GX or EX card could be valued at around, you know, $10, but you could have bought it for $2 or $3 off of someone who is selling it, whether it be on eBay, whether it be on, you know, Facebook Marketplace, these Discord groups. And so there's a lot of really opportunities to bundle and kind of sell off a lot of those penny to penny cards. And so that's one thing I feel like a lot of people really need to take into consideration when it comes to understanding, okay, when it comes to, you know, TCG Player, what's the first step? Level 1 through 4. Okay, what's the next step after that? Level 4, I'm now in the direct program. Okay, now that I'm in the direct program, I'm selling at a lot higher of a volume, so I have to buy more. Okay, crap. I have all this product that isn't selling. It's about 70% crap and then 30% that's consistently flipping. How do I get rid of it? This is kind of the progression and the steps that you get to as you're continuously growing your TCG Player Direct business. And it's one of those things that I feel like a lot of people, you know, don't understand how to solve this issue because you don't hear a lot of PokeTubers really discussing the intricacies of this and how you can consistently find ways to churn over that bulk so you can free up that liquidity to then, of course, continuously scale your business. Now, there is, of course, going to be a lot more to this, but this is going to be part 1 of a second video that I'm going to make in the future, which is going to be a long-term play. So if this is something that you're wanting to make a full-time gig or you want to make 6 figures plus on this, I know it sounds crazy to say, but there is opportunity for that to be done, then of course, stay tuned for the second part of this video. But as far as it goes, as always, if you want to enter into weekly giveaways, make sure you leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We post pre-recorded content for you to do so each and every week. If you are interested in, of course, joining our recent program we just added to the Patreon, our wholesale access tier, where you can access any of our 5 distributors for a Patreon fee. Of course, make sure to check that link down in the description below. And lastly, if you are interested, of course, in joining the community, make sure you check out the Discord, links down in the description below, as we have a lot of awesome individuals within the community that are willing to help you out in any way. Or of course, we've got a lot of amazing deals consistently going on in our deals channel. But as far as it goes, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until then, I will see you guys all on Monday. Peace.